A little spiritual thought that happened while my friend Mary Jane was here, that I wanted to share with you because it's just so very cute and appropriate. And we found out that on Sunday morning that this is why we weren't able to be here, that her train was going to get her into Los Angeles, and she would have had to take a shuttle to the airport, which would have made it way too tight. She was starting to stress out. I mean, like going nuclear. And I told her, I tried to comfort her, and I said, you know, Mary Jane, it'll be all... And she looked at me, she goes... and at that split second that she did that, my African Grey, Skylar, my African Grey in the background said, "Nommer!" like this. And we both laughed hysterically because we'd been trying to figure out what Nommer was all week long. She's like, "What does that mean?" She says, "Is it Jeffrey Dahmer or is it..." I said, "I don't know, Dahmer, daughter." I said, "I think that my friend Cindy, where he was staying for 5 years, it was the name of her dog. And she shortened it to Nommer." But I said, "You know, Mary Jane," I said, "the universe always gets his 2 cents in. So you wouldn't allow me to comfort you, but the universe made sure that you got the message anyway." So anyway, today I would like to talk about, in combination with our 3 topics, which are spiritual evolution, personal responsibility, and empowerment, something that I think they're going to have to put on my tombstone, you know, she did her best. That why I am still attracted to religious science after 37 years, and here at the Positive Living Center for the last 25. People who excel in their lifetime often give credit to their family members, a church community, or friends and colleagues in their environment that help support them with their loving support to help them become successes in their life. And I was doing some research on Ernest Holmes this last week, and I was really thinking about what it was like for him 100 years ago. He started writing published his first book in 1919. And I was thinking that I was raised in Christian Science, and she started that church in 1879. And so the New Thought was relatively in its infancy. It was still only 40 years old at the time, or so, because I didn't check all the odds and ends with that. But we know Ralph Waldo Emerson lived in the mid-1800s and started his teachings and stuff at that time. And so really what Ernest Holmes had come to was coalescing some of the ideas that had come forth in the last, say, 50, 60 years, and put it into a technology with which we could change our lives and begin to shift our consciousness as opposed to the boxes that other religions wanted you to be in for their particular purposes. This particular, he said, if we can treat our spiritual learning as the scientists do, meaning improve it to yourself, then we have so much more power in our own lives for us to move forward in whatever spiritual direction we want to. So in our fast-paced world, Ernest Holmes' teachings are still very fresh and alive, wouldn't you say? And so why do I personally think so? In comparison to other Christian environments, Ernest Holmes published a little book he called "It's Up to You" in 1919, and he said that our release is knowing that there is no power in the universe against us. And if you think about the people that are sitting in church this very morning who are fumbling with the concepts of Satan and going to hell and all those other scary, scary things, what a reprieve, what a breath of fresh air to know that there is no power in the universe against us. So many people are still struggling with that. My mother is one of them. She's boinged all over the place, but she has, in her final years, is working as a Jehovah's Witness. And and it's fascinating to me how she could go from New Thought to find comfort somehow in a Jehovah's Witness idea of the old God of Jehovah, who was punishing and jealous and don't make me mad kind of guy. So in our topics this month, which are power, empowerment, self-responsibility, and spiritual evolution, it's like if we have this big bad daddy waiting for us to screw up, looking for opportunities to punish us and make it, and if you've made him mad, I personally would feel very uncomfortable exploring the inner regions of my own soul if I had to put the things that make me feel most vulnerable at the feet of someone that is that immature in terms of a spiritual father. And so it reminded me of a story that happened to me when I was 8 years old. We were in Clearwater. We used to vacation in Clearwater and join my aunt and uncle from Ohio back in the 60s. And it was up to me to bathe my sisters and get them ready for bed as being the oldest daughter. And not knowing how the knobs worked in the bathtub, inadvertently turned on the scalding hot water of a hotel onto my little sister sitting in the pool, and sitting in the tub, and they started screaming. My dad rushed in to save the day, and after it was all over, he knelt down and looked at me and he said, "Did you do this?" And I said, "No, Daddy, but I promise I won't do it again." And so for me, it reminds me, it's like, well, some of that's still in play. If somebody's mad at me, it's like, well, I try to con my way out of it, but it's like, but I promise I won't do it again. So Ernest Holmes says, as individuals working on our freedom, we want to get away from arguments, from hurts, from trying to force to force our opinions on others, from pretending, and from the feeling that we have to suffer from others people's criticisms. And this can come in one and only one way, by seeing right through all of the camouflage to the eternal spirit back of each one of us. The one mind in which we all live, move, and have our being. We're all made of the same stuff, capital S. When we unify in love with life, we talk in a universal language with which we can speak to prince or pauper. So a couple of ideas that makes a comfortable environment for me to regain my empowerment, to be able to take responsibility for, and to evolve, first of all, is that I am the beloved child of God, and that I am the prodigal son. And if you need to be reminded of the story of the prodigal son, the father had two sons, and one of them asked for his inheritance early, went out to the far lands and squandered it, and then the famine came to the land where he was living, and it was so bad that he worked for a farmer who was raising pigs, and all he got to eat was what was left over by the pigs. So he decided that the servants of his father would certainly at least they had enough to eat by serving his father, so he decided to go home. And when the father saw him coming, he dressed him in the finest robes, gave him a ring, put the shoes on his feet, and killed the fatted calf, and they were going to celebrate that night because he thought his son was dead, but he came home. And the oldest brother said, "Well, Dad, I've always done it right. I've always been straight. I've never squandered your inheritance. What about me? You never killed the fatted calf." Does that sound familiar? And he said, "Son, you've always been my son. You will always, everything that I have is yours. But let's celebrate today because we thought that your brother was dead and he's back." And so for us, no matter where we wander, whatever dark corners we find ourselves in, my understanding of the God of religious science, the one that I have adopted for me, is that I can do no wrong. I am going to suffer at the hands of my own thoughts, my own brain, but God will never hold that against me. And secondly, that my continuation is guaranteed. I believe that I am immortal. I believe that I am a spiritual being having a human experience, and that I will continue. I was talking to someone yesterday in the shop about, she thinks that this is all she gets, that there's the one life. And I said, for me, that makes no sense at all. How is it that you, being a female living in California in 2016, would ever begin to give you the slightest inclination to what life is about? So for me personally, that just never made sense. And she says, "I really like the way that you think. I wish I did too." And I said, "Well, come on over." So we were told by Jesus this stuff 2,000 years ago, but it took our great teachers from the New Thought movement to help us understand what the Master's teachings were about. For me, the Positive Living Center, Angelo, and religious science has been supportive in guiding me in my spiritual evolution by supporting me in my inner knowing that the universe is with us, is on our side, wants us to succeed, fulfill our dreams, desires, and most of all, to be loving to one another and every living thing, including our planet. That it's safe to do so. There is no ultimate evil power. I needed therapy years ago, and I interviewed this lady, and it became very clear to me that she wasn't as squishy as I needed her to be. I knew that because I came from a very strict parental situation, that I was going to, in order for me to plumb the depths of my soul and to heal those issues, I need somebody who was very gentle, who would gently guide me down that path to greater healing. Because I have always been willing to go as deep as I possibly could to heal as much as I can in this lifetime. And so that is with my God. Ernest Holmes said, "I do not know any man who is entirely overcome all the ills of the flesh, but I do know that the greatest aid that can come to him is for him to rid his mind of fear." And he continued to say, "As God cannot behold evil, it follows he does not know disease. Therefore, disease is not a divine reality, never was or never will be." And so for us as practitioners, that is a place that we must move into to know the truth for you, that regardless of the appearance of what you're going through, ultimately it is not true. For me to have this teaching, I am a wanted, needed, unique, required piece of the universe, loved beyond measure, and one all life gives me the courage to examine my fears, to let go, and to let God help. That He is loving and safe. If I felt that not only was I afraid of life and death, but also felt punished and was doomed to suffer, I would be like a plant planted in the wrong soil, and I would not thrive. For me to evolve, I needed an environment that was gentle and non-judgmental enough to let me go where I needed to go, and when I came back, to receive pats on the back and tools to help me on the way, and were always welcoming for wherever I returned from wherever I had been. It's like watching my animals, and we've heard so often times about the shepherd watching over the sheep. I can watch them with love and pleasure to see how they learn without my direction or judgment or need to make them into something that they're not. I can enjoy their sacredness just as they are, and that's how I see God sees us. This new thought that God loves me and completely, and that He trusts me to come back to Him regardless of the paths that I take, gives me the courage to keep going, to listen to the still small voice and know God has always got my back. In my animal chaplain work, I'm reminded of Mark 12:30-31. You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all of your mind, and with all of your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. No other commandment is greater than these. And God is the type, my Father is the type that He's willing to do the work just to show me how easy it is. Because that's how great God's love for us is. And inside the hearts of a people everywhere, this is who we are. We are one connected into making up part of this vast universe, the loving, positive force called life. Those teachers like Holmes, Emerson, Trine, Hopkins, Eddy, and all the others were called to bring Jesus' message of a loving Father and a guarantee of what was in store for us all as prodigal sons, and into a new understanding of who we are, our divine purpose, and that we no longer needed to be afraid of what was to happen after we dropped the body and crossed over to the other side. Religious science teaches us how to use the laws of the universe for our greater betterment and success by changing our thoughts. Then finally, our little community called the PLC, with great thanks for the idea to bring this forth, that God gave Angelo, with His love, patience, and guidance, created this environment for us who feel pulled to this teaching, a safe place for us to take back our power and make great strides in our infinite quest to evolve spiritually and to find our way home.